Jab victims left disabled after taking jab react to bombshell Yale study that found that the shots caused extreme changes in the body. When a new Yale University study identified a debilitating syndrome linked to the jab, Lindy Ayers breathed a sigh of relief. The 31-year-old Army veteran, who by the way was forced to take this jab, has been wheelchair bound ever since she took her second Pfizer jab back in 2021 as part of the government's military mandate. In this small study, Yale researchers found patients with previously unknown post-jab syndrome show distinct biological changes. The most common symptoms appear to be brain fog, dizziness, tinnitus, which is like, isn't that the ringing in your ear that's incurable? Exercise intolerance, well, I have that, a feeling of exhaustion, and limited exercise. In patients with the syndrome, the jab also appears to awaken a dormant virus known as Epstein-Barr and interfere with people's immune systems in complicated ways that we still don't understand. It wasn't until after 2023, 2 years after receiving the jab, that doctors at the Veterans Affairs of Stanford University even diagnosed her with chronic fatigue from jab residuals. Miss Ayers, see, the thing is, the doctors, in my opinion, many doctors are in on it. They don't.
So chronic fatigue syndrome is associated with Epstein-Barr, which, if you notice the two different contexts of Epstein-Barr that have been discussed tonight, right? Bill Barr, Jeffrey Epstein, plus the Epstein-Barr virus that is now reenacted from its dormant state by whatever that gene therapy concoction they lied to people to get them to be lab rats and ruin their lives. I have a friend, Kevin Larson, who filmed a jab victim who this kid was, freestyle mountain climber, surfer, incredible athlete, took the jab so he could get an education at college, lost his ability to be a functional human being, is now like a vegetable in a wheelchair type of situation because he's trying to get educated in this world. And some places extract an awful cost and give you nothing in return. And I think that is criminal, which gets back to the point of passing the test. When I showed you guys the Get Autonomy website, it's a test. It's there to weed yourself out or to let yourself through to the breakthrough. But I want you to know that you're not alone. Like over the past 6 years, we've taught almost 1,000 students, but there's another 20,000 of you sitting on that list wanting to make change and a little fearful about getting off of square one. And if you don't learn to help yourself and move yourself forward, like you're not going to find that there's a market for excuses. Like if you're the only one buying your excuses and holding back your own progress, there's not a whole lot that other people can do for yourself until you learn to get past those limiting kind of extended adolescence, pre-baked in inconsistencies that we all have from schooling. So it takes a little bit of self-courage and a little bit of bravery to be like, I want to better myself than what I am able to do for the world right now. And I think that's something that once you learn to demonstrate that type of courage for yourself, it not only affects you in a positive way, but it's going to inspire other people to do likewise. And again, we can't be a land of the free if everybody's enslaved to poverty. On the other hand, there are some people who are so poor that they have nothing else other than money. And those people are in sad situations that we don't help over at Autonomy. I'm sorry, I don't help those people because that's not the problem we're here to solve. You uncorking your potential and bringing your value to the market and doing the incredible things that you can do in the world with these skills, that's what freedom looks like in the future for this place. So I just wanted to say sometimes tough love is necessary because it gets people to actually get off square one and start making the change that they need to make for themselves. So I'll leave it there for now.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Can I throw out some stuff about that last little thing about how it changes the DNA or whatever? So
yeah, because that whole bioweapons experiment is still going on out there in people's bodies.
Yes, exactly. So, that was the whole impetus really for the creation of Unjected, because at the time, March 2021 or May 2021, when Shelby started it, it's like, we don't know what the hell these shots are. We had speculation, like a lot of us in this whole, community had been questioning certain things. And so as it continued to unfold, myself and, I was very much involved in like trying to unpack this information. I was working for Ryan at T Lab, and I wrote this article. It's kind of like, has the stage been set for corporations and big pharma to patent humans, with the idea of how they were able to, patent GMOs based on the fact that they were able to change the composition, the genetic composition of those things. And so this led
not
me
only
to
that, Scott, but the point that is right there is like 10, 15, 20 years ago, Monsanto was like, if our seeds blow into your field, that's
Correct,
now
yeah.
our field. You owe us money because our seeds are in your field. And when their gene therapy's in your body, they can claim ownership because they're like, no, your product's in us. It's you're Moderna now.
Exactly. Exactly. And then it's so interesting too, because, in their paradigm, they kind of formulate it like, yeah, it's great that we changed your DNA. Now you're like a spike protein manufacturing factory, right? So they characterize it as a
You're
good
in
thing.
distribution for the system.
Yeah, it's like we've just circumvented, like, now you don't. Anyway, that's their view of it. And it's so interesting because, okay, so then writing that article led me to this study right here, which is called Pre-Exposure to mRNA, LNP, lipid nanoparticles, inhibits adaptive immune responses and alters innate immune fitness in an inheritable fashion. So really what that means, the inheritable fashion, talks about how the immune effects received from this mRNA injection gets passed down to future generations. And in this particular study, it talks about, it's looking at mice, and it shows, I actually had this separate window right here, shows how up to 4 generations down, it can detect the effects from the shot from the mother, the original mother. That shot can be detected up to 4 generations down in an inheritable fashion. And so, it's an interesting study. I just threw it into the ChatGPT just to summarize it. It says the mRNA LNP injections can cause epigenetic changes in immune cells, which can alter how genes are expressed without changing the DNA. So it says not necessarily changing the DNA, but still altering the genetics to such a degree that it's being passed down to future generations. These modifications can be inherited by future generations, potentially affecting their immune response. And it's funny because in that study, it characterizes that as a good thing. It's like, yeah, now your kids will have this immune response.
Yeah, you
too.
get a
Isn't
license.
it great?
You're licensed. But they're going to send you a bill.
Yeah. So, I was talking about that in 2023. So it's like, it's really interesting that this is coming to the surface, and it's kind of it's great.
That coupled with the fact that the mRNA injections were designed to be inhalation and like self-spreading. That was one of the things that they were looking. This is Pfizer BioNTech from November 2020. It's a clinical protocol, and inhalation and passive inhaled mRNA vaccination for SARS. These are things that they had been working on, and there's a lot of evidence that goes back over the years prior to the event that just gave them all the excuse in the world to do what they wanted to do, with everybody giving them a pass and looking the other way very uncritically.
Yeah. Crazy stuff. So
do you guys remember that interview between Fauci and Mark Zuckerberg where they talked about antibody dependent enhanced infections, whereby
AIDS?
Yeah, the ADE.
Yeah.
And Mark Zuckerberg was like concerned because he had looked into the history of mRNA testing for the last 10 years and was like, hey, I noticed that there was like this phenomenon where you would actually be more prone to an infection than protected because of this mRNA, essentially over focusing on one strain and then ignoring everything else. And Fauci's like, yeah, paradoxically, this kind of thing kind of happens. And this whole time I'm thinking, like, did they fix that somehow? Because it seems like they just rushed into production without testing sufficiently, and they admit that this was an issue in the past decade, which is why they hadn't brought previous mRNA products to the market. So I don't remember there being like a press release saying like, hey, we solved ADE, it's no longer a thing. And it sure seems now 2-3 years on that it very much is a thing, along with inflammation.
Feature, not a bug. That's how they treated it.
Yeah.
It's a shame because a lot of people's lives are still being wrecked by that without like light on the horizon, light at the end of the tunnel. Some semblance of hope that by understanding 4 years on, we could do this other thing and fix those things retroactively, but so many people were denied early treatments, and then that coupled with the fear, coupled with the lockdowns and all the other unknowns, I mean, that wrecks people's immune systems right there and makes it very easy for anything to take them down.
Kind of like the whole AIDS quote unquote situation.
Well, you could get that from touching cereal boxes in the morning.
Exactly.
That's 1984 Dr. Fauci wisdom. That killed a lot of people and had a lot of family arguments, I'm sure, that didn't need to happen.
Twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created Autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media is not going to do anything but reinforce what schooling prepared us for. And so we're going to have to take a leadership position and take steps off the beaten path to kind of blaze our own trail in life. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.